Hello and welcome to the backfield. I'm your host Connor Schaff, and ladies and gentlemen, mostly gentlemen, we're all done. We're about 12 hours away from finally getting our 12-team playoffs, knowing the final rankings, and we are going to go through the projections for those rankings today. And let me just tell you, I'm recording this right after the end of the Duke-Virginia game, as you can imagine. And I was getting pretty nervous for a second because I was very excited because Duke just completely dominated that game. And I thought we would have a major controversy, not only for who would be the 9 and the 10 seed, but who would be the 12 seed too. And then Duke has the worst clock management of all time within the last 2 minutes. Virginia gets back into the game. But then Duke pulls out in overtime, so we do have two big controversies to talk about. Those two big controversies will be talked about a little bit more in my other video that will be releasing about 30 minutes after this one. Probably is live by the time you're watching this. Make sure to go check it out. It will be my final college football playoff predictions. So let's get right into these rankings. And as you guys know, with every one of these videos, we go over the selection committee criteria first. But at this point, it is basically pointless because the selection committee has not followed their own criteria at all. But what you need to know is that what they have done in practice is that they have a heavy emphasis on the eye test. They have a heavy emphasis on film, on what teams just look the best. And I think that will influence my rankings quite a bit today for what I think the committee will do. But what we're going to do is what we always do and go through who can be ranked out of every single team that has a chance to be ranked and then narrow that down to 25 teams, which is exactly what the committee does. So we start off with the American. Tulane obviously wins the American. They are officially locked into a playoff spot. North Texas, Navy, and South Florida also all could be ranked. Then we have the ACC where Virginia obviously loses the ACC championship to Duke. Georgia Tech and Miami also can be ranked. Then we have the Big 12 where we have the same 5 teams, BYU, Houston, Texas Tech, Arizona, and Utah, all 9-3 or better. We have the Big 10 where we have Indiana, Illinois, Ohio State, Oregon, Iowa, which I correctly predicted would be ranked last week, USC, and Michigan. Then we have the SEC with Texas, Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, Missouri, and Georgia. Obviously, Georgia wins the SEC over Alabama in pretty dominant fashion. And then we are down to just 2 others. We have UNLV on here, but they lost their championship game. I don't think Boise State at 9-4 has any chance to be ranked because they have dominant losses to teams like USF that are already just barely hanging on to the conversation to be ranked. But Notre Dame and JMU are here. So let's get into 21 through 25 where we address controversy 1 for 2. And that is with James Madison and Duke, who will be in the playoffs. And I think the committee are going to give it to us as close as possible because that's just what the committee does. They're all about the headlines. And I think James Madison will be ranked 1 spot ahead of Duke. Now, I will be honest with you. I still think Duke has a chance to make the playoffs. And I will talk about that more in my other videos. So once again, make sure to check that out. This video, we're focusing more on the rankings themselves, but I think James Madison will be ahead of Duke, meaning that James Madison will make the playoffs. We have Iowa at 23, Georgia Tech at 22, and Houston at 21, so no changes in 21 through 25. Then we have 16 through 20, where we have USC still sitting there at 16. Tulane moves up to 17 after winning the American Championship game. I actually thought it was a very interesting topic when Virginia were still in the game. If Tulane might actually be ranked ahead of Duke or ranked ahead of Virginia, even if Virginia wins the conference championship game, because Tulane actually adds a ranked win to their resume, while Virginia has I want to say has 0 ranked wins on their resume of currently ranked teams. So technically, Tulane did get a much better win, even if Virginia won the game. In Tulane, I get that people are very unhappy with the performance of the referees in that game, but Tulane still in my opinion, was the much better team in that game and deserved to win that game. You even think of with the controversy about the touchback with the ball going back into the end zone on the pick six. Tulane still got a pick six. I know maybe. I think it's a little closer than people are giving it credit for. Like, I feel like if that was ruled a touchback, we would have had the same controversy about that not being a touchdown if North Texas ended up winning the game. But then we have Arizona here at 18, Michigan at 19, and Virginia at 20. So Virginia falls a couple of spots, not too far though. This is where it's going to get really tough because obviously I think Virginia's ranking doesn't mean anything, but it kind of ties into this. In that, what do you do with these teams that lost their conference championship games? I think Virginia is a slightly different case because they lost to an unranked team that lost to UConn and Tulane for that matter. That's actually a great point. Tulane was much more dominant against Duke than Virginia was. But yeah, we'll see what they do with Virginia. But this is really where we get into the controversy, and we're about to rip the Band-Aid off because you can see here that Alabama is ranked at 11. Now, obviously, I'm sure you guys have some deductive reasoning skills. That means I think Alabama is going to miss out on the playoffs. And ahead of them, or behind them, we obviously have Vanderbilt and Utah. They don't move at all. Then we have BYU here at 13. BYU just looked really poor against Texas Tech. I think it's unfortunate that they didn't get more of a chance at the playoffs, but they already weren't going to make it unless they won their conference championship game based on how the committee has ranked them, and they looked awful both times Texas Tech played them. And it's just not a good look for BYU at all, to be honest. It's like it really doesn't help the case they've had over the course of the season. Now, we move to Texas, and I think people are slightly underselling this battle. I think Texas might be more in this battle for the 9 and 10 seeds than people think. Obviously, they have Texas behind Miami. So, and we can go, hold on, we'll move into 6 through 10. And I'll explain something else here after with Texas A&M jumping Ole Miss. But I think Oklahoma stays here at 8. I know a lot of people think Miami and Notre Dame will both jump Oklahoma. I think that would be incredibly unfair to Oklahoma. But, so I don't think that'll happen. But so we have Miami at 10, Notre Dame at 11. Oh, I just spoiled it for you. Nothing really that crazy is going to be in those ones, but we'll get to that in a second. Alabama at 11 and Texas at 12. So, pretty much I'm ranking these 4 teams. Miami 1, Notre Dame 2, Alabama 3, Texas 4. Now, I think Miami, I would be absolutely flabbergasted if Miami is not in the playoffs tomorrow. Not only will they certainly jump BYU, they very likely will also jump Alabama, and they have a head-to-head win over Notre Dame. So I think they're going to jump oh my gosh, I've done it again. I have no control over my arrow buttons on my keyboard. This is very sad. But I think that this is really where the committee is going to take into account the eye test, and that is why Notre Dame will be in over Alabama. Now let's talk about Texas for 1 second here, because I actually think there's a bit of an interesting conversation about Texas, because you take Miami out of the matter. Now you have a 3-way battle, Notre Dame, Alabama, Texas. Texas easily has the best resume of these 3 teams. What's the argument Texas has over Notre Dame? Obviously, the argument for Notre Dame over Texas is very easy. Notre Dame has 2 losses, Texas has 3. Notre Dame didn't lose to Florida, Texas did lose to Florida. Now, what's the argument for Texas, though? And I find that also pretty simple. Texas has a win at home over Texas A&M. Notre Dame has a loss at home to Texas A&M. Clearly, the committee does not care about common opponents at all, which is why I do think Notre Dame will be above. But the thought of that has to be sitting in the back of your mind just a little bit. Plus, Texas wins over number 8 Oklahoma, number 14 Vanderbilt, and if they choose to put in, I don't think they actually have any other wins over. I don't think they beat Tennessee or Missouri, but I could be wrong. But I think Texas has a very good argument, and one of their losses is to Ohio State still. You really cannot punish that loss that much. But I'm saying all that to say that I think Texas is going to be the lowest ranked of the 4 teams. Now let's talk about Alabama for a second. And this is why I don't think Alabama is going to make the playoffs. You can't see my camera right now, but I have 5 fingers held up. I have my hand held up. I can count on my hand the number of rushing yards that Alabama had in a 60-minute football game. Well, it would be pretty difficult too, because I would have to chop off 3 of my fingers to do that. Alabama had -3 rushing yards versus Georgia. This is not a team that should be in the playoffs after that performance. And I get it is so difficult to leave out a team like Alabama with the name value of Alabama when you really shouldn't be punishing teams for losing in the conference championship games. But Alabama looked so bad. It was disastrous how poor they looked on offense, especially. And the game, honestly, at 28-7 was probably closer than it should have been too. And I think that that's going to leave Alabama out of the playoffs, unfortunately. And I think it sets a tough precedent, because if Alabama didn't play this game, they would have been in the playoffs. But we've seen the committee, and every week of this year, pay so much attention to which team looks better at playing the game of football. And Notre Dame has looked better at playing the game of football than Alabama has. And it's as simple as that. I don't think I agree with it. I don't think Notre Dame should be ranked anywhere near the playoffs. I'm a firm believer that Notre Dame should be punished for the fact that they don't play in a conference. If it was up to me, I'd probably have Miami and Texas in the playoffs. And I probably would have left Alabama out before this week, but that's a different conversation. You can go back and watch my video last week for why I thought that should be the case, but I'm not making the projections, the committee is. Well, I am making the projection, but the committee is making the actual rankings, so these are my rankings, these are theirs. But we do need to talk about this for 1 second. Texas A&M being ranked at 6 and Ole Miss is being ranked at 7 is purely for one, I think correcting a mistake from last week. We've seen the committee are willing to correct mistakes. I think that it was ridiculous that Texas A&M dropped that low. I actually thought Texas A&M would have been the 5 seed, not the 7 seed. So I think that the committee are going to jump them back up by 1 spot, partly to avoid replayed matchups and partly to punish Ole Miss for not having a coach. And I think that the committee are much going to rather Texas A&M play a group of 5 team than Ole Miss, because I have a feeling Ole Miss won't be playing as well. But now we move into our top 5, which you've already seen, and I feel like this is pretty self-explanatory. Can we just give a round of applause to Indiana? I can feel the applause coming through the video right now. I really believe that every single one of you are clapping right now. Now, trust me, I can sense it. And for you who wasn't clapping, and I'm pointing at you, you hate Indiana, and you should be ashamed of yourself. With that all being said, the first play of this game, Fernando Mendoza goes down injured. Now, I started watching the Virginia Duke game because that game started first. and I switch over to the Ohio State-Indiana game on the second play. And I see Mendoza in the game. And I'm like, okay. Well, I didn't think anything. Then on the sideline, they show Fernando Mendoza with his helmet off, getting looked at. I was very confused. Turns out Fernando Mendoza's brother is the backup for Fernando Mendoza. And fair play to Fernando Mendoza for walking off that injury and playing well, because that was a massive hit he had, and he did really well to fight through that and end up winning the game. So good for Indiana. Obviously, Georgia will come in here at second. Ohio State will come in here at third. Maybe Texas Tech jumps Ohio State. I think that would be so harsh to Ohio State. But honestly, I think that Texas Tech has a better resume than Ohio State does. It's just like, realistically, you can't drop Ohio State 3 spots. So I think that this is almost certainly what's going to happen. But with all that being said, that's all I have for you today. This is a slightly shorter video because I do want to have a bit to talk about in my other videos, so make sure to check that out. That should be going up in the next 30 minutes, if it's not already out by the time you're watching this. But thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to let me know your thoughts on these predictions in the comments down below. Let me know what you think the college football playoff field will be. Let me know what your predictions are for who will be in, who will be out, who will be ranked in the top 25. And I will see you guys next time. Have a good one. Bye.